Texas Woman. This painting is called Texas Woman. It was inspired by comic books, feminists, and an 87-year-old lady, Mrs. Estelle Manning. I met Mrs. Manning in 1974, and for 5 years I helped her with her weekly grocery shopping. I saw her as a surrogate grandparent who needed some help. However, she wasn't at all like my real grandparents had been. Cranky and domineering, that's the best way to describe her. Several years before I'd met her, she'd promised to will her house to the Salvation Army after she died, so they sent a lawyer to write up an agreement. But Mrs. Manning didn't like the lawyer, and after hours of wrangling, sent him off. Much later, after I'd been doing her shopping for almost 5 years, she discovered the deed to her property was missing. "Somebody stole it," she said. And who did she suspect? Me. Pleading innocent, I phoned the Salvation Army, and their social worker said Mrs. Manning had signed all the proper papers several years ago. The deed to her property was in a file cabinet at Salvation Army headquarters, but ownership would be transferred only after Mrs. Manning's death. In return, every week, Salvation Army workers came over to her house to care for the yard and do any necessary maintenance. When I explained to Mrs. Manning that the Salvation Army already had her deed, she wasn't appeased. "If they got it, then you stole it and gave it to them." "Why would I do that?" I asked. But Mrs. Manning couldn't be convinced. As she saw it, I had taken her deed, and that was that. What probably happened was this. When the Salvation Army had sent a lawyer to deal with Mrs. Manning, she had been cantankerous and crotchety as always. The lawyer, working pro bono, got tired of dealing with the old lady and simply took her deed and forged her signature. But I couldn't persuade rock-headed Mrs. Manning that I was innocent. Never mind that stealing her deed and giving it to the Salvation Army benefited me not one bit. Meanwhile, she brooded on my supposed crime and eventually got so mad she threatened to shoot me. That's right, she owned a gun. Purchased in 1936, it had hibernated in her desk drawer all those years and probably wouldn't have worked in 1979. Nonetheless, I didn't want to take a chance. Mrs. Manning's temper was never very predictable, and who knows if she'd get mad enough to pull the trigger. I phoned the social worker at the Salvation Army and got her to do Mrs. Manning's shopping. Later, she phoned me back and said, "I think the old lady was planning to shoot you." "I know she was planning to shoot me," I said. "That's why you're doing her shopping." A few months later, at age 92, Mrs. Manning fell over a pile of old newspapers and broke her hip. She ended up in a nursing home where she refused to cooperate with the physical therapy nurses. Hoping she had mellowed since I'd last seen her, I paid a visit to the nursing home. "I'll forgive you for stealing my deed," said Mrs. Manning. "You can make amends by helping me get out of this place." "You have to cooperate with the nurses and do your physical therapy. You can't go home until you can walk," I told her. "I'll let you live rent-free in my garage apartment if you get me out. I know I'll heal fast if I'm in my own house." "I can't do that," I said. "You have to learn to walk first." Not having her gun handy, she threw her water pitcher at me and cussed me out. I left. I tried to visit 2 other times, but as soon as she saw me, she pitched a fit, yelling and screaming. So I stopped coming. She never did walk again and died in the nursing home about a year later. Unlike Greek goddesses, Estelle Manning wasn't immortal.